So I'll be talking about science and deep tech and why this mainstream, forgotten maybe for a couple of years, is really making into the mainstream of international VC. And we are very happy to be co-hosting this together with Voima, and we are, as you know, as Mia said, one of the leading deep tech and life science investors in the Nordics. And I'll be today claiming two things. Since I have only 20 minutes, I will be making two claims. I'll be putting forward two propositions, which sounds a bit pretentious maybe. I will have to prove this to you in some way. Why deep tech and why deep tech investing? Deep tech, well, that's the non-trivial side of new ventures. That's the sort of intellectually demanding new technology, new science being put into products. And why is this so interesting? Well, the first thing, might not be self-evident, is that science is maybe the only viable way of predicting the future. The Oracle of Delphi might be one, or taking mind-altering drugs, or asking customers, or reading tea leaves might be alternatives. I think maybe reading tea leaves might even be better than asking tea leaves moves. Customer don't. So if you want to understand something about the future, you have to look at what's available, where does this all lead? And maybe science is the only viable way of understanding where industrial dynamics and future is headed. So it's maybe the only viable way to gain a competitive advantage in investing. The second thing is that deep tech is such a safe, risk-free, or not completely risk-free, but it's such a great way to access returns. Also, and yesterday when I was testing these two hypotheses on some colleagues and friends, they were a bit hesitant. So I will have some tough time to really convince you, if you're not already convinced, that this is true. But very shortly about us. We have been around for a long time. We are a self-managing fund. We're a foundation. We're based in Stockholm, and what we do is that we invest from our evergreen fund into non-trivial new technology, new science, new enterprises. Sometimes it comes from the science world. Sometimes we invest in entrepreneurs that deeply understand some area of business which they want to disrupt. We have done it for a long time. We started off with some $150 million as a grant 40 years ago, and now we have invested that grant in we have invested about $1 billion into about 1,000 companies, and now we have some 50 in the portfolio, and we still have 650 million left, whereas more than 200 in cash to invest in our old companies and new companies. And we are a typical late seed and A-round investor, and our team, we are a mixture of industrial experts, scientists, and investors. And what we do is, what we have in common, that we are very curious about new technology and smart people. We love meeting smart people that tell us how the world works. But now let's start with maybe the most controversial thing, and that's why is science the technology tomorrow, and why is science the only viable method to understand what's ahead? Well, science seems to be repeating the very same pattern. It's the discoveries that then open opportunities that then get commercialized. And what seems to be forgotten is that sometimes we, and I'm an economist as well, sometimes tend to believe that efficient markets in some way create new technology, which is completely wrong. It has never been like that. The market is a very efficient tool for the efficient production and correct pricing of things that are already known. Without science and without breakthrough technologies, the market would have given us, we would still be writing with quills. Those would be very advanced quills, very cost efficient, and we would have many providers of quills in many colors. But breakthrough and new technology requires something else. And then another thing we have to, which might also be a bit controversial, is that where does the new science, the new technology come from? And as I was reminded by our friend Caroline here in the intermission, is that sometimes quotes steer us completely wrong. I think that all of you have heard this, necessity is the mother invention, which is misattributed to Plato. But necessity is not the mother of invention. I just read, when I was sitting in my car, I listened to a documentary about the Anaris accident, where a lot of people were killed in a blizzard, and where this only survivor told how he tried to dig out his friends with a broken ski. But there is no market for broken skis for digging. The necessity invents when you need to survive. You take shortcuts. You simplify something. But the true invention is created in the free, playful investigation of how the universe works. And one of the best examples, and this is a general pattern. I really challenge you to try to come up with something which is a major breakthrough, something really novel that has been created in a situation of dire need. I don't think it exists, but I might be wrong. But this first drawing, does any one of you recognize that? It's Galileo's clock, the first clock prototype. What Galileo did, and he's one of the big heroes of that. Of course, well known, but what a genius. What he did, he didn't take it for granted that things fell with different speeds when being with different weights, as Aristotle had claimed 2,000 years before. He actually tested, and he also realized that if you have a pendulum, then the period is only dependent on the mass of the pendulum and on the length of the string. And then he created the first stable, reliable oscillator. Now we use quartz oscillators or atomic oscillators, but that was the first oscillator. And that was purely curiosity-driven, joyful exploration of the universe. But then he was such a genius that he also realized this could be used for timing. This could be used for designing precise clocks. So this drawing was actually dictated by a then blind Galileo to his son. It didn't take a long time before these were actually manufactured. Christian Huygens. I really hope that someone of you are Dutch, because someone appreciates my valiant effort to pronounce it right. But anyhow, he patented a viable clock in 1657, and that was the start of a new revolution. Not only were clocks manufactured, but it was also the instrumental breakthrough to solving the longitude problem of navigation. Of course, the latitude is easy to determine when you navigate the ship. The longitude, the east-west dimension, is far more difficult. It requires precise clocks, and it was the basis for a huge governmental effort in many European countries, like the 1714 Longitude Act in the UK, which set off the entire British clock industry, which then set off another industrial revolution. That was the mechanical loom, which wouldn't have been possible without the clock industry. So really, the curiosity sets off some high-tech revolution, and then industry follows on. I'm sure that this was the pattern already a long time ago, when some Egyptian pharaoh said that I believe that this nation should commit itself to build this humongous pyramid and place me in it. And then some people saw that that was a huge effort, and some people saw that, did you see that crane that they used to build the pyramid? Maybe we could manufacture something similar, but maybe simpler, and sell to farmers along the Nile. I'm sure that that's a pattern that repeats itself, and it still repeats itself. This is the starting point of the VC industry started off really with the semiconductor and the industrialization of that, driven very much by various defense needs of the United States. And then it set off a tremendous revolution. And all of the deep tech doesn't have to be as revolutionizing. But this pattern is so fun to follow, and it's so important to be in touch with scientists and engineers developing and pushing new technologies forward, because then it tells you what's going to happen next. And well, let's discuss that later. The second thing I wanted to tell you about is, so why does this create an amazing VC model? And of course, you don't ask your customers what's next, but you have to ask your customers what you want to buy. And these are our customers. These are the customers that buy our premium goods, the startups we help develop. Because the different VC models, as I see it, is the consumer VC model, which is very risky, but extremely rewarding. If we have 250 million subscribers that Spotify have, of course you have created an immensely valuable business. But the older business model of VC is different and maybe more stable, and that's selling new technologies to stagnating tech giants. So these are our customers, if we are deep tech investors, and these are the customers we need to understand. And I'm not saying that these customers do not understand what's coming when it comes to technology. They have extremely smart engineers that understand what's next, but they often cannot invest in it. And so our business model is try to understand which direction does science point to, and what will these people have to buy in a couple of years' time, in 5 or 7 years' time. That's the business model. And since we look at science as the way of looking around corners and then invest in new technologies, we make these technologies viable for these companies. These companies, and the same goes for the large pharmaceutical companies, they cannot buy anything as an ID or as a patent or as a concept. They need to have that concept developed into a viable prototype or viable product with a couple of customers, with some sort of support organization. So our role as investors is to identify those technologies that these people, like the Amazons and the Googles and the Intels and Apples and Microsofts, will have to buy. And many of these companies still operate, at least if they are running bleeding edge technologies, they operate in a very vertically integrated way. So all of these companies actually do their own hardware, which I think, well, a lot of people know that maybe Amazon, they have their own cloud chipset. But maybe 5 years before they bought the Israeli company Annapurna, they didn't really know that they needed their own chipset. They might have known, but they had to buy a certain competitive advantage. So they bought and it's a great company. They have their chipset, I think it's called a graviton. The interchanged quantum of gravitation. For a physicist, that's a great name. And all these other companies, they have research and they do build their own stuff. But also the Loihi neuromorphic chipset that now Intel manufactures as a prototype for neural networks on silicon, that's also an externally sourced technology. So what we need to do, and it's not, well, that's a tall order, of course, but we need to understand the direction of science which creates products that these giants, these stagnating tech giants, will have to buy in a couple of years. And the attractiveness of this business model is that it's the best way for us to sell these companies is when there is competitive pressure, when these companies try to outbid each other. So if you create just any kind of entrepreneurially driven business, it's mostly you sell it on the how many customers you have or KPIs, the price sales multiples. In a competitive process, the sky is the limit. For even very, very small companies with almost no turnover, we can have extreme price tags for these companies. And if that doesn't work, well, then we can always sell it on price sales multiple. If we can't do that, there would at least be some alternative engineering cost to the product so that it will have a customer. And even if there is hardly any value in the product, at least the engineering team will be brilliant. So there will be some sort of acqui-hire value of the company. So high-tech companies are always worth something, whereas a failed consumer product will usually be a successful or complete failure. And now, talking about gravitons, it would be great to invest in quantum gravity, but I guess that it's even my board would have a problem with that. One has to be realistic, of course. One has to choose technologies that are viable, that are sellable in a time frame of venture capital. And I admit that some technologies take a very long time to mature. Now we are talking about quantum information theory, and that's a 100 year later after the mathematics of quantum mechanics was well understood in the 1920s, and now we see super dense coding with the interchange of qubits. But it doesn't often take that much time. It can be quite fast. And I guess that everyone now, if you are running an honorable sort of a serious startup, you have to have some sort of AI component. And when did that happen? We had, until very recently, we had an AI winter. And then anyone, I should have, but I didn't. But if you followed the literature in AI, the paper setting off the new wave of AI, the Geoffrey Hinton groups about unsupervised deep learning, that paper was published in 2007. That's not a very long time ago. And the first paper describing the sort of the concept formation of higher level concepts in unsupervised deep learning, that was published in 2012 when someone rediscovered cute cats on the internet by analyzing pictures. So it's not that recent, and it just took off immediately. So many of these concepts don't have to take such a long time. This is a cute example, I think. The first picture, those are unsupervised. It's a cloud. It's a swarm of independent robots, and these robots communicate only with themselves with no central control, and they form kind of Turing patterns. And that was a research subject at MIT in 2014. That the second picture is only 4 years later, which is a fully automated, unsupervised warehouse where when robots that only collaborate with each other, completely as a swarm, pick and place stuff in these small boxes. This is an experiment, but now it's commercially viable. So the thing is that really deep science sometimes only takes a couple of years to mature into something really relevant to the industry and attract really rich customers. And the only thing is that you, of course, have to think, how viable is this? How important will it be to the customer? How expensive will it be? But nevertheless, it's the science that creates the value. And then the market takes care of these things and makes them affordable and relevant to a broader industry. So, to my mind, investing in mainstream stuff that's already been invented is a high-risk game. To take the risk of investing in yet another electrical scooter company is a huge risk, and I admire the people that have the boldness. We don't dare to do that. We have to invest in new science that creates new products for new markets, and we can charge for that without taking that humongous risk on consumers and stuff. So, and my colleagues will now head panels to prove some of these statements I have done. You don't need to believe what I've said, but anyhow, it's such fun to work with deep science, so only that should be a sufficient reason to do it. So, thank you very much.